Hi everyone! In the last video, we went through how to create your user and using the practice wizard to set up the basics of your practice. We're going to get a little more in depth in this video on how to go through and modify some of your practice settings. So to begin, we're going to go to the website flow.dentimax.com, and then you're going to log in with the user you've created and just click the login button. If you have multiple practices your user is part of, in that screen that just flashed for a moment, you would have a list of the practices that you've got access to, and you would just select which one you want to log into. Because I only have one link to my user, that's the one that automatically opened. From there, we're going to go to the top right corner and click on that settings cog and hit the setup button. In the setup screen, we've got a couple other tabs listed up here at the top. And on the top right corner, you have the edit button. So when you see something you want to make a change on, now, a year from now, 2 years from now, you can go ahead and hit that edit button and make changes as needed. If I go ahead to the schedule settings, we're going to start here and just review the business hours. And so my current practice is open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If I want to modify that, I'm going to click the edit button in the top right corner, and let's say we're going to open up Thursday as well, but we're only going to do a half day and close at 12 p.m. Now I've added that day to my scheduler once I hit the save button in the top right corner. Below the business hours, you do have some scheduling options that you can choose and play around with until you get your scheduler looking just the way you want. I have my time intervals set to 15 minutes, but if you guys prefer 10-minute intervals in which to schedule, that would mean that you would have 6 lines within 1 hour, each line representing 10 minutes for the appointment. You can go ahead and make that change. You also have time height, which dictates how tall or how big each line on your scheduler is. So if you are like me and you like to see your schedule in one view without having to scroll, you can play around with the time interval and the time height and try and get that schedule looking the way you'd like it to. Next, we have the appointment flash status. Some people may not want to use this at all if flashing bothers you, but other offices may find this a really helpful tool. The appointment flash status is basically set to where when you mark an appointment as ready to be seen, checked in, unconfirmed, or late, only one of those statuses, I'll choose late, you can set a color for that appointment to flash on the screen at you. It's not a quick flash, but it's not slow either. And I'll go ahead and choose sunburst. So when my patient is not marked as checked in or ready at the time that their appointment starts, for example, 10 a.m. If they're not marked ready at that time or checked in, that appointment is going to start to flash at me with the sunburst orange color. And that is a really great visual indicator that you might want to take some action. For example, I might pick up the phone and call that patient, especially if they're a new patient and maybe they need a little more directions. I might send them a text message if it's an existing patient and make sure they're on their way and everything's okay. So it's just a great way to kind of notify you of important appointments you might need to pay a little extra attention to. Below that, we have the option to block scheduling so many days out. For example, a lot of offices don't want to book more than 390 days out, and that is because they may book a couple of hygiene visits out for a patient. So if they're booking 2 6-month appointments, that would be in 365 days. They don't necessarily want to cut that short and schedule someone too soon. So they might give that little extra grace period so they could book 2 out at a time. You don't have to set a limit on how far out you book if that's not an issue in your practice. Below that, you've got a few checkbox options that kind of dictate how the scheduler will work. So for example, we have the option as a global setting for every user in your practice to hide the patient names on the scheduler. What you would see instead on the appointment is their chart number. We do have a different setting if this is only relevant to a few computers in your office where patients may see somebody else's name on the schedule. There is a toggle option on the schedule that you can just toggle on that computer only for that user only versus a global setting that does it for everybody. So that option is super helpful if you're concerned about any of the computers in the office potentially showing another patient's name on the screen to someone else. You also have the ability to use the procedures to determine how long the appointment is. So each procedure code you can attach a length of time to. If you stack several procedure codes together, it'll stack that length of time and auto set how long that appointment will be. You can also use multi-codes in our system to set a length of time for that combination as well. You do also have the option to fully color in the appointments on the schedule, whereas the default is just the top line is colored in based on the appointment color you select. In the system, we do have about 20 colors you can choose from, and those colors you're able to name, and I'll show you that right over here on the side. Under Rename Appointment Colors, if I choose Golden Glow, for example, and I want all my hygiene appointments to be yellow, I can go ahead and just label that yellow and click Rename Color. How that helps me is when I'm making my appointment and I'm choosing an appointment color for that appointment, I don't have to try and remember that yellow means hygiene. It'll say hygiene for me when I go to select a color. So we do have about 20 colors in the system you're able to use, and just the top line is colored by default, but this little checkbox right there will color the full appointment in the color you've selected. Right below that, we have Disable Appointment Conflict Warning. What that means is by default, the appointment conflict warning is enabled. And so every time you go to double book a provider, you will get a pop-up that says, warning, this provider is already booked at that time. Are you sure you want to book this appointment you're attempting to make? If you double book on purpose frequently, you may want to disable that warning. If you don't do that frequently, you probably want to leave it on. The next option is to show a warning when moving an appointment on this scheduler. If you are a clicky person with the mouse or one of your staff members is super clicky, they might inadvertently move appointments on the schedule without meaning to. And so you probably want to have this setting turned on so that they get a notice that they accidentally moved an appointment if they're not aware that they did that. Also, we have the ability to keep canceled appointments on the schedule. By default, canceled appointments will disappear from the schedule when you mark them canceled and after you've made your note as to why that patient canceled. If you'd like to keep them on the schedule just so you know what the day was supposed to be like, then you're going to want to check that box and have that setting enabled. The last option here under scheduling options is the U.S. Postal Code search. What this does is super cool. If you are entering somebody's address, you can just fill in their postal code instead of their city, state, and postal code. This option is going to go ahead and take their postal code you've entered, and it's going to automatically fill in the city and state for you. And that stays up to date with the changes that the U.S. Postal Code makes periodically. We've already gone through the rename appointment color options, so we'll go up here to the display appointment information. The first checkbox we have there is to show the wait times on the schedule. This is a super handy tool for offices to understand where their patients might be getting stuck in the process of moving through their appointments and where there might be some points of friction. A really great use case for that is if patients complain that they wait too long in the waiting room for their appointment, you can start tracking and mark them checked in when they show up. It'll log how long they've been marked as checked in, and it'll log how long they've sat in checked in status until you mark them ready. When you mark them ready, it'll start tracking how long they've been marked as ready, which means they're waiting for an assistant or somebody to come pick them up and take them back to their room. It'll also log how long the procedure has gone on in the room. So if you're consistently scheduling 45 minutes for a crown prep and the patients are consistently in the room for 60 minutes, that's a pretty good indicator that you might need to adjust your expectations and your scheduling templates. So that option is really great for the whole staff to be aware of how long that patient is waiting in each status. Below that, you've got 6 different lines of information that you could choose what goes in there. And if you click the drop-down menu, this menu is the same in all 6 lines. It's just a way to reorder or order where you want them to go. For example, if I want the patient's mobile number first and then their age and insurance as the second line, I can find age/insurance and put that there. And where age insurance is, I'm going to put preferred contact method instead. So you can reorder these to whatever makes sense for your practice and pick out 6 different lines of information that you want to see in that appointment. On the right-hand side, we have dates the office is closed. This actually is a hard close for the practice. So for example, a holiday in which nobody gets scheduled versus the doctor is not here and we might see some patients. So we can hit the plus sign to add a holiday in, and we'll go ahead and add New Year's Day, for example, and save our changes. And that's going to block off that entire day so everyone's aware you're closed that day and nobody is going to be scheduled. Once you're done plugging in your office close dates, you're going to want to go ahead and save your changes. And that concludes our scheduler settings, and we'll see you for the next video.